Hey TV Maniacs, July is looking seriously stacked. Anya Taylor-Joy is back on TV for the first time since The Queen's Gambit, Silo returns with a new season, we've got everything from crime thrillers and sci-fi to gangster dramas, supernatural mysteries and a few proper wild cards. Let's jump right in. Let's start with the show I'm most excited to see in July. Lucky is an Apple TV crime thriller that looks simple for about 5 seconds and then starts throwing criminals, missing money, family trouble and FBI heat at you. It looks fast-paced, stylish and very bingeable. Anya Taylor-Joy plays Lucky, a former con artist who was raised in the criminal life by her father, played by Timothy Olyphant. She's tried to leave that world behind, but then a massive robbery goes wrong, her husband Carrie disappears along with the money, and suddenly Lucky is being hunted from every possible direction. The FBI wants her, the mob wants her, and Carrie's mother, played by Annette Bening, is not exactly the forgiving type. That's a very clean hook, but the reason I'm properly interested is Jonathan Tropper, who's the showrunner. He's behind Banshee, Warrior, Your Friends and Neighbors, and he also wrote on C. So fast, stylish, slightly messy stories about people making terrible emotional choices are very much in his lane. From the trailer it looks glossy, expensive, sharp-edged and built around momentum. Apple TV has been very good at these slick adult thrillers lately, and Lucky looks like it knows exactly how to keep the pressure on. Do not read too much before watching. With this one, half the fun is probably watching Lucky improvise while everything around her catches fire. Next up is the Westies, and this looks like MGM Plus aiming straight at people who miss dirtier side of old school gangster dramas. It's set in early 1980s Hell's Kitchen, back when the Westies were still a real force in the neighborhood. They were an Irish-American gang surrounded by bigger players, especially the Italian mafia, but they had a reputation for being so violent that nobody could just brush them aside. The story is built around the construction of the Jacob Javits Convention Center, which gives the whole thing a proper pressure point. A huge project lands in the middle of the city, and suddenly everyone who lives off fear, favors and backroom deals wants to know where they fit. J.K. Simmons plays Eamon Sweeney, one of the gang's old school leaders. That already tells me the show is probably going for something blunt, heavy and full of characters who don't need to raise their voice to make a threat land. And this comes from Chris Brancato, the creator of Narcos and Godfather of Harlem, so expect criminal empires, shifting loyalties and the feeling that half the respectable people in the room are just gangsters with better suits. If Lucky looks slick and fast, the Westies looks more bruising, a street-level crime story where every deal feels like it could end badly. Silo is back for season 3, and if you're already watching this show you probably do not need much convincing, but if you have somehow left it sitting on your Apple TV watchlist, July is the time to fix that. The basic setup is still brilliant. Thousands of people live inside a giant underground silo with one rule drilled into them from birth. The outside world is deadly, and asking too many questions about it is a very bad idea. Rebecca Ferguson plays Juliette Nichols, an engineer who starts pulling at the wrong threads after a death inside the silo refuses to sit right. And that's where Silo is at its best. It takes this huge sci-fi idea and makes it feel personal because every secret she gets near has a cost. Season 3 is especially exciting because it reportedly uses a split timeline, with part of the story going back to show how this world came to be what it is. That's exactly what I want from the next chapter. The first 2 seasons were all pressure, paranoia and people trying to survive inside a system they barely understand. Now it feels like the show is ready to pull the camera back. It premieres July 3rd on Apple TV with 10 episodes released weekly, so you can watch it properly, suffer every Friday and pretend you're not checking Reddit immediately after. Elle is a risky one, but also one of the more interesting swings Prime Video has in July. This is the Legally Blonde prequel series set in the 1990s with Lexi Mindtree playing Elle Woods before Harvard Law School and before the world found out how badly it had underestimated her. The story follows Elle as she goes from being an LA girl to a high school outsider in Seattle, which immediately gives the show a cleaner engine than just young Elle Woods Woods being young Elle Woods. Reese Witherspoon is involved as executive producer, and the whole idea apparently came from her watching Wednesday and realizing how much fun there was in seeing an iconic character during her high school years. That actually makes sense. Wednesday worked because it didn't just copy the old Addams Family formula, it gave the character a new setting with its own drama. Prime must like what it has because Elle was renewed for season 2 before season 1 even premiered. Expect something bright, nostalgic, and very easy to watch. Ride or Die is about two women who are best friends, except one of them has been keeping a fairly big secret. Octavia Spencer plays Debbie, who thinks she knows her best friend Judith pretty well. Then she finds out Judith, played by Hannah Waddingham, is actually an international assassin. That's the hook. From there, things spiral into a European action comedy after a mission goes wrong and someone dangerous from Judith's past comes back into their lives. So Debbie is not just dealing with the fact that her best friend lied to her for years, she is suddenly being pulled into car chases, fights, assassins, and the kind of chaos most normal people would need 3 nervous breakdowns to process. Bill Nighy is also in the cast, which already makes the whole thing feel a bit more fun. Tone-wise, this looks like Prime going for something loud, fast, and very easy to binge. Not a serious spy thriller, more of a messy friendship comedy with bullets, stunts, and 2 very different women trying to survive each other as much as the people chasing them. All 8 episodes drop on July 15th, and this feels like one of those shows you put on for 1 episode and accidentally finish by Sunday night. Netflix's new Little House on the Prairie arrives on July 9th, and this version seems to be moving closer to Laura Ingalls Wilder's books than the comfort TV memory a lot of people have from the 1970s series. The story follows the Ingalls family as they leave Wisconsin and try to build a new life near Independence, Kansas. So yes, you still have the family, the wagon, the prairie, and the old-fashioned sense of starting again, but the books were never only cozy. In Little House on the Prairie, the family settles on land that is still legally uncertain, they deal with diseases, and the Osage presence is part of the reality the family is walking into. That's the more interesting version of this story. Netflix is describing the new series as part family drama, part survival story, and part origin story of the American West, which tells me they're not just making a soft nostalgia piece with nicer cameras. The original show became comfort viewing for generations. This one looks like it wants the warmth but with more of the danger and complication from the books left in. Furious is Hulu's new crime thriller about an FBI agent hunting a female serial killer, and that alone gives it a slightly different flavor from the usual killer of the week setup. Emmy Rossum plays Alice Black, a bottom-rung FBI agent who gets pulled into a case after a billionaire's son is found dead and the crime scene doesn't feel right. The killer is Catherine, played by Lola Pettigrew, a young woman with a list of men she's targeting, and the scary part is that nobody has noticed the pattern yet. The series is loosely inspired by the 1987 film Black Widow, but this version looks more psychological than glamorous. Less seduction thriller, more angry cat and mouse story where both women are carrying things they don't know how to put down. Elizabeth Merriweather created this one, which is interesting because she's behind New Girl, The Dropout, and Dying for Sex. So expect something character-driven, sharp, and probably more emotionally messy than a standard FBI procedural. The first 3 episodes drop on Hulu on July 27, then the rest release weekly. This is the one to watch if you want a crime thriller that feels a little more personal, angry, and hopefully less predictable than the usual FBI chase. Stuart Fails to Save the Universe is probably the strangest show on this list because somehow the Big Bang Theory universe is now getting a full multiverse comedy. Kevin Sussman returns as Stuart Bloom, the comic book shop owner from the original series, except this time he's not just standing behind the counter making awkward jokes. After Stuart accidentally breaks a device built by Sheldon and Leonard, he creates a multiverse disaster and has to try to save reality with the help of Denise, Bert, and Barry Kripke. That's a ridiculous premise, but at least it's not playing things safe. The show is coming from Chuck Lorre, Zach Penn, and Bill Prairie, which makes the whole thing feel like a proper swing rather than a random side project. Expect something much sillier and more chaotic than Young Sheldon. This looks more like a comic book comedy built around alternate universes, familiar faces, and Stuart being the last person you would trust with the fate of existence. Could this go wrong? Absolutely, but at least it's trying to do something different. Stuart was always funny because he felt like the least equipped person in any room, and now the show is handing him the fate of the universe. The 5-Star Weekend is Peacock's new drama based on Elin Hildebrandt' best-selling novel, and this looks like the softer, glossier binge on the list, at least on the surface. Jennifer Garner plays Holly Shaw, a successful food blogger whose life falls apart after the death of her husband. Instead of disappearing into grief, she invites 4 friends to her Nantucket home for what she calls a 5-star weekend. One friend from her teenage years, one from her 20s, one from her 30s, and one surprise choice that makes the whole guest list a lot more complicated. That's a smart setup because it gives you 5 women in one beautiful house, all carrying different versions of the same person in their heads. Darcy Carden, Regina Hall, Chloe Sevigny, and Gemma Chan play the friends, which is a very strong cast for a show built around awkward history, old loyalties, and conversations that start politely before someone says the thing everyone was avoiding. All 8 episodes drop at once, so Peacock clearly knows exactly how people are going to watch this, probably with wine and probably while judging everyone's life choices. The Hawk is Netflix's new golf comedy starring Will Ferrell as Lonnie the Hawk Hawkins, who was the #1 golfer in the world back in 2004 and still believes he has one more great run left in him. The problem is that almost nobody else seems to agree. Lonnie's body is telling him to retire, his ex-wife thinks he's done, and his son Lance has become golf's new golden boy. So the comeback is not just about winning another tournament. Lonnie is chasing the one major he never won, the one that would complete his Grand Slam, while his own son is standing there as the younger, cleaner, more marketable version of everything he used to be. That father-son dynamic is what makes the premise more interesting. You can already see the awkwardness, Lonnie trying to prove he's still the main character, Lance trying to build his own career without being dragged into his dad's midlife sports meltdown. Netflix describes the show as goofy, irreverent, and built around a dysfunctional family, so expect broad comedy, golf world nonsense, public embarrassment, and Will Ferrell doing exactly the kind of overconfident disaster man role he can still make work when the writing is sharp. The Hawk premieres July 16th, and this one feels like the easiest comedy watch of the month. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 4 arrives on Paramount Plus on July 23rd, and this is still one of the easiest modern Star Trek shows to recommend. The series follows Captain Pike and the crew of the USS Enterprise before the original Star Trek, with Anson Mount, Rebecca Romaine, Ethan Peck, and the rest of the main crew returning for another 10-episode season. The big selling point here is the format. Strange New Worlds still feels like proper adventure of the week sci-fi. One episode can be a tense alien threat, the next can go funny, emotional, weird, or full-on genre experiment, and Season 4 looks like it's leaning into that even harder, with the trailer teasing space western energy, black holes, strange planets, and even a T-Rex. If you've avoided the franchise because it looks too dense, this is one of the cleaner entry points. There's history here obviously, but you're not being asked to memorize 40 years of lore before anyone lets you enjoy the episode. Just get on the Enterprise and let the week's disaster begin. Gone arrives on BritBox in the US on July 23rd after already airing on ITV and ITVX in the UK. The story begins in Bristol, where Sarah Polley disappears from her home. Her keys are still there, her phone is still there, nothing looks like a normal runaway situation. Her husband Michael is the headmaster of a private school, and when he reports her missing, the police quickly starts asking the obvious questions. Is he a worried husband or the reason she vanished? David Morrissey plays Michael, which is exactly the kind of casting you want for this. He can make a character feel respectable and unreadable at the same time. Eve Miles plays DS Annie Cassidy, the detective assigned to Sarah's disappearance, and Michael's past soon becomes part of the investigation. The series comes from George Kay, who co-created Lupin, and it's inspired by To Hunt a Killer, the book by former detective superintendent Julie Mackey and ITV crime correspondent Robert Murphy. So the appeal here is very straightforward: a missing wife, a husband who doesn't look innocent, and 6 episodes to find out whether the obvious suspect is too obvious for a reason. Fightland is a new boxing crime drama coming to stars on July 31st, and the setup is very direct. Howard Charles plays Maduka Duke Kilroy, a former boxing champion released from prison after years away. He returns to London wanting revenge against the Kane family, a powerful boxing dynasty with deep criminal ties, because he believes they betrayed him and helped destroy his career. The Kanes still have their hands all over the sport. They control fighters, shape careers, protect their own reputation, and have had years to decide exactly how Duke's story gets told. So when he comes back, he's walking into a world that already moved on without him, and probably preferred him locked away. 50 Cent is executive producing, which fits the tone this seems to be going for. Aggressive, physical, and full of people, treating boxing like a business where the damage doesn't stop when the bell rings. Expect prison baggage, old betrayals, family politics, and a revenge story with a lot more anger than inspiration. This one looks built for people who like their crime dramas bruised, loud, and personal. Human Vapor is the strangest Netflix release on the July list, and I mean that as a compliment. This is a Japanese sci-fi crime thriller based on Toho's 1960 film The Human Vapor, which came from that same era of Japanese genre cinema where science fiction, horror, mutation, and social panic all started bleeding into each other. So the idea sounds wild on purpose. A suspect who can literally turn into gas, a death that happens on live TV, and a case that seems to point back to a secret project where vulnerable people were used and discarded. That's much more interesting setup than the title makes it sound. The new version also has Yeon Sang-ho involved, the filmmaker behind Train to Busan and Hellbound. His best work tends to take a bizarre genre idea and play the human desperation completely straight, so I'm really curious about how this one will turn out. From what Netflix has shown, expect something cold, strange, and more serious than Gasman thriller has any right to be. Murders announced in advance, science gone wrong, a detective chasing something he can't explain, and one of July's biggest wildcards. The East Palace is Netflix's Korean supernatural period drama arriving on July 17th, and this one looks like a strong final pick for anyone who wants something bigger, stranger, and more visually dramatic. The story is set inside a cursed royal palace where the king calls in 2 people who can deal with the dead in very different ways. Gu Cheon is a ghost slayer who can move between the world of the living and the world of spirits. Sang Gang is a court lady who can hear the voices of the dead, and she's hiding a secret of her own. Together, they are brought into the East Palace to investigate the hauntings, but the curse seems tied to the palace itself, its history, its rulers, and the things that have been buried behind royal walls. And because this is a Korean period drama, you can probably expect the haunting to be tied to the royal court itself. Old decisions, hidden enemies, and people inside the palace who are much more dangerous than whatever is moving in the dark. From Netflix's trailer, expect sword fights, palace politics, ghostly horror, and dark fantasy visuals that could make this one of July's biggest international releases. So that's July, a seriously packed month for TV, whether you want crime, sci-fi, comedy, revenge, ghosts, or something completely weird like Human Vapor. Now I wanna hear from you. Which one of these shows are you most excited about? Let me know in the comments and let's discuss. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share it with a fellow TV addict, and subscribe for more smart weekly recommendations. While you're at it, check out the video that's on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, happy binging, see you in the next one, and remember, sleep is optional when there's one more episode.